Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your boy CIZZ, you dig, live action Kansas City, Missouri. And we are back again with another episode of the College Stetzer Show, formerly known as the Culture Talks, as y'all already know if you are current listeners. And look, I tell you guys every week, every single week, and I don't think I failed you yet. At least y'all got to tell me if I failed you, but I don't think I failed you yet. I'm back again with another fire guest. And I tell y'all every Friday, I'm going to come back with another fire guest. It's Friday again, you're listening to this, and we got a dope individual on. So today, per usual, we try to bring people on who are from the culture in some way or fashion that look like the community that I'm around, and are doing dope shit and have done things that are outside of the box. And here again, we've brought another person on that does that. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, my brother.
Hey, appreciate it, man. That was a smooth intro, man. That was crazy. We were just having a conversation. Y'all ain't see how this dude just flipped the switch and became a personality, man. Props to you. I'm excited to be here. But hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Faraz Hemani. I'm from Missouri City, Texas. Today, I'm gonna be talking about my background working in commercial real estate and my journey, how I got here, and yeah, a lot of discussion about those different opportunities that are out there for folks just like you.
Love it. I love it. I love that you're from Missouri City just because, I'm in Missouri right now. So, I know you're not Missouri City, Missouri, but keeps it correct. So for people who aren't too familiar with Texas, can you share what's the closest thing Missouri City is to? Like what's the closest, or what I guess county is it in, or what big city is it close to?
Yeah, we're right outside of Houston, right outside of Houston. But we got our own little culture and sense of pride here in most cities. So we love it. And I've been here my whole life. I'm born and raised in a small town, or a top town right next door called Sugarland. I went to Austin for school for a while, came back, but I'm born in Texas, raised in Texas, and I'm gonna die in Texas. I'm gonna be here my whole life.
I love it. I love it. I've been wanting to go to Sugarland, Texas, just because there's that Alphalete Jim and Christian
Yep.
Guzman and all those people are down there. I actually have a friend that just flew in yesterday. I'm in the personal training industry outside of podcasting media. So I have a friend that just went down there, and he's at the new Alpha Land space. I was like, damn, I'm trying to get down to the Houston area because it looks like all the healthy people is down there today.
All the healthy people. You should come around for the rodeo when they're eating fried Oreos, fried churros, and all of that. But man, funny enough, Christian Guzman went to the same high school as me. Shout out Dulles High School, man. He
Oh,
was
wow.
a year ahead of us, and it's been crazy to see him. I mean, you watch some of his old YouTube videos
Yep.
from like early 2010s, 2011s to where he's at now. Unbelievable. I mean, that guy's doing phenomenal. That new Alpha Land, it's got to be one of the craziest gyms I've ever seen. It's like a theme park. It's so big.
Sick, super sick, super sick. I love it. Well, brother, let us know, man. So, you said you're from Missouri City, Texas, born and raised, plan on staying there for life. So you obviously are a Texan in and out. Can you kind of share, what was your childhood like growing up, and why have you developed such a passion and love for your town? A lot of people are trying to get out of their city. They're trying to leave to a bigger city. They're trying to go to LA. They're trying to go to New York. They just hate home. What about home like made you feel like this is where you want to be and build your career for the rest of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I usually explain to people this way: if you were an alien and they dropped you in Texas and they said, "All right, pick somewhere to live," you're probably not going to pick Houston, Texas. I'm gonna be honest with you. There's a lot cooler places in Texas sometimes. Austin, Texas, that's all the hype ever. And I lived there for several years, so I get the hype. Dallas, all these places, but home is home. Like Houston, I'm blessed to have my family live 5 minutes away from me. My wife's family lives 5 minutes away from me. My childhood friends, everybody's here. And I really like Texas. Like I'll travel and I'll always get a longing to come back because it's just something about the place. The people are awesome. The pace of life is nice and slow. And it's a ton of opportunities out here. I mean, every industry is out here. You meet a ton of interesting people here. There's just a way of living out here that people tend to enjoy. And everyone I know that has come and spent time in Texas and moved out here, people tend to love it. People tend to come here and not leave. And I think that's my plan as well.
I love it. Me and my girl visited Austin a few months ago, and we are like, yeah, we like Austin, but we got to check out the rest of Texas as well. Cause there's nothing but positive energy coming out of Texas. That's one thing for real. I've never heard somebody say they hate, where they live. They just might
Yeah.
want to get out for a little bit. So what were some of your early interests, some of your early hobbies, 10-year-old Faraz, like what were you doing? What did you think you were going to be when you were older? What was like exciting to you?
Yeah, I always grew up thinking I was going to be a lawyer. And that's because my teachers would tell my parents I talk way too much, I'm arguing way too much, and all of these things. And I think I saw a movie. Like a John Grisham movie. John Grisham used to write these like thriller law books, and I watched one of the movies, and I got really excited to be a lawyer. And I even joined the debate team when I was in high school, and I had a ton of success doing that. I was this Texas state champion actually for 3 years in a row in debate, which hadn't been done
Damn,
in the history of the
that's
state
sick.
at that time. Yeah, it's awesome, man. I hope that's not where I peaked, but it honestly might be. So I gotta watch out for that. But man, ultimately, then I went to the University of Texas, and what I learned is I don't think I could do 4 more years or 3 more years of school or whatever that is, that law school requires. I had learned a ton just doing random things on the side and hustling while I was in school. We used to do all sorts of stuff for money back then. We would flip cell phones. We would I don't know if I should be saying this on the podcast. We'd be helping people with their online courses and writing essays and all this kind of stuff. And so at a certain point, I realized like I'm not going to do more school. I left school not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. Lucky enough, I was in Austin, so there's a ton of jobs out there. I went, I worked for some tech companies. I worked for a buddy startup, but real estate found me real like by luck. I had a manager at one of the companies I worked at that used to buy houses and flip them and hold them, and he was a real estate investor. And I remember at that time he was encouraging me, Faraz, you should buy a house to live in. Don't throw your money away in rent. Go, buy a house. So I went and bought a house, and he helped me through the whole process. And he liked the neighborhood so much, he's like, I'm gonna buy 2 houses here too. I'm like, okay, hold up. He's buying a couple houses here then. And he must be on something. He must be on something I don't know. And so I went and I asked and at that time, 2017, 2018, Austin was already blowing up. It was the hottest place in Texas. So I would come back home to Houston and ask folks, hey, are y'all trying to invest in Austin? Are you trying to, there's doctors and all those folks in our community. And I would try to raise money and get some houses back then. And mind you, I barely had any money at that time. I was just starting to work. And so I was able to raise some other people's money, buy some houses in Austin. And luckily enough, the market went crazy there. We did really, really well for ourselves, and it opened up a ton of opportunities in real estate to us. But, I could go on and on and on, but I
Right.
think
I was
I was
about to
just
say,
fortunate.
I was
Yeah.
about to say, I was like, whoa, wait a second, because we gotta
Yeah,
run
yeah,
it back.
yeah,
But I love
yeah,
that. I
yeah.
love that. So first off, remind me when we get off this podcast, I want to introduce you to my friend Ashkan. He actually just bought a house in Austin a little while ago. I think you guys would get along, have a few similar interests. Plus his family lives in Houston as well. So
For
um
sure.
so I want to talk a little bit about, your time in college though. So high school, you transitioned to college. Obviously, I see you got your bachelor's of science. Did you not know what you wanted? I mean, were you planning to go to law school like your second, third, and fourth year of college, or did you already make your decision in that first year? You're like, nah, I'm not about to do this. Let me just finish my 4 year and get out of here.
Man, I'm gonna be honest. I decided like middle of high school that I don't really like doing any more school than I need to do, honestly. So, and the reason I studied public relations, and I don't have a great reason for that either. I just really wanted to go to UT Austin. Austin was where it was at. That's where that's where the party scene was. That's where all
Right.
the action was. And bad as it sounds, I went in Google search. What's the easiest program to get into at UT Austin? And so I applied to whatever helped me
Strategy.
get in the door there. Yeah, and so I ended up doing public relations there, which was a great time and all of that. But yeah, as mentioned, like I don't think until a couple of years after I graduated, even I didn't really have a direction as to here's my 5 or 10 year plan. Here's what I want to do.
And I hear that, but if we look at your resume, you've worked for some pretty large tech companies. So can you kind of talk about, I know, you've recently made a big transition, which we'll jump into in a little bit, but can we talk about how you found some work with Google, how you found some work with Oracle, especially since, like you said, you didn't know what you planned on doing coming out of college. Those are some big companies that people have been planning their whole lives to work for. So how do those
Yeah.
opportunities come about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't say I'm any kind of genius or anything like that to get a role with those companies. A lot of it was just Austin is a land of opportunity. And so, a lot of folks that are listening that maybe think, say, these companies are inaccessible or I could never work at a place like Oracle or Google. These companies are growing. They're hiring steadily for people with all sorts of backgrounds. So I was lucky enough, I was working with a friend and someone at Oracle just reached out to me on LinkedIn. And mind you, at the time, I didn't have any sales or tech experience or anything like that. I was, just like a regular kid straight out of college. So I joined Oracle in a sales role and I worked there for a couple of years. Then, same thing with Google. They just were growing so much in Austin at the time. I had somebody on LinkedIn reach out to me, hey, do you want to come join Google? So I joined there in a sales role and I worked in Google sales for a while. And lucky enough, I worked in sales, and I talked to a bunch of people at Google. It's a real cool family kind of atmosphere over there. So just with some of the connections I made, I was able to jump out of sales and into like more of a strategy focused role. So I was in a role what they call program management. My job was, how do we bring more customers onto this Google Cloud platform? What are all the marketing levers we can pull, and the financial levers, the pricing levers? And that was the greatest experience for me, because it taught me to like flex different muscles in my mind that maybe up until that point I really hadn't had a chance to flex. Thinking strategically, thinking like an owner, thinking like, it gave me like a sense of being an entrepreneur almost in a risk-free environment. But yeah, all of that to say, it sounds real nice in the resume, Google, Oracle, all that, but I promise you, uh, there are a ton of companies out there that are hiring and looking for people to join.
I love it. And so you mentioned that those were you had some sales roles there. So obviously sales and the skills you develop in sales are applicable to entrepreneurship 150%, at least in my opinion.
Yep.
So can you talk about maybe some skills that you built while you were working at those jobs, such as skills, and how they've kind of transferred with you or been applicable to the real estate industry and with what you're trying to build right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at a high level, what you'll learn working in a corporate environment, a lot of people are there. They're just clocking it in. I'm checking in at 9. I'm leaving at 5. And you can do a lot. You don't got to be the brightest person in the room. You don't have to be the one that went to Harvard or Stanford to excel. If you go in and you really give it 100%, you're going to outperform 95% of people around you. That's the nature of corporate life. And you take that mentality to entrepreneurship, it is the exact same thing. There's a couple of folks on Twitter that I really like in real estate, and they put their whole playbooks out there all the time. Here's exactly how we look at deals. Here's exactly what we do. And people ask the question like, how are you giving all this information for free? How are you giving your playbook? And the answer that one of the guys gave was awesome. He said, well, I know 99% of y'all aren't going to put in the work, so it's okay. I don't mind. I don't think anyone's going to come and steal it.
That's so
And
real.
that, yeah, 100%. So, I mean, the big thing I took away in that environment, just go put in the work every day. You're 95% of the way there. Don't have to be the brightest. You didn't have to go to Yale or Stanford. Anyone can go and just put in the work. But outside of that, man, the actual tangible skills, sales got me a great chance to talk to people. It's an uncomfortable role when you start in sales and you don't have a background. I started just cold calling people. Like, my job was working at tech companies, picking up the phone, calling total strangers, not only total strangers, but CIOs, VPs of IT, seasoned like veterans at big companies. And here I am, like this 22-year-old kid who just learned about these products like a month or two ago and had a little training. And it's uncomfortable to make those calls and all that. So it taught me a lot about being uncomfortable. Like, hey, growth comes from being in uncomfortable situations. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that is your everyday, right? You only grow when you're putting yourself in those uncomfortable, challenging spots. And I think I took a lot of that with me, when I made my moves.
Absolutely. And speaking of uncomfortable, last month, you, if I'm correct, submitted your resignation from Google and decided to go full on into what's the name of your company, by the way? Is it Pebble Ridge Capital?
Yep, Pebble Ridge Capital. That's right.
Awesome. So you submitted your resignation at Google and decided to go full force into real estate. So talk to me about that decision. Like, I'm sure a lot of people, that's actually how I kind of came across you personally, is just that tweet on Twitter, and then ended up just looking at some of the stuff you do, checking your LinkedIn, doing my little research
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
podcast person and somebody that just likes business. So talk about, that uncomfortable move. That's pretty ballsy. That's pretty you gotta like they say in football, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. No, man, it was definitely not an easy choice. It's one I agonized over for a while. And what folks maybe don't see, because they did a little article in Business Insider and all of that, talking about the experience, but it was not an overnight decision. It was like a decision a couple of years in the making, right? As I mentioned, the background is I started with just a couple homes in Austin, but I looked around and I would be on Twitter and social media and all these things, and you see all these people succeeding. And now, granted, you can't believe everything you see on social media. Everybody looks like a millionaire on social media, right? So take it all with a grain of salt. But you see that people at a young age, or so, like, I'll put it this way: when you're working corporate, there's kind of a curve. Like, you're making this much this year, you'll get a little bit more next year, a little bit more next year, but the rate at which you can grow, there's really for the most part a cap to it. A lot of places you got to serve your time before you go up to the next role and all that. There's not a bunch of 24-year-old vice presidents at these big companies. But being an entrepreneur and being in real estate really uncaps your potential, right? If I go out there, like I said earlier, if I go out there and just outwork 99% of people, and I get to eat what I kill, I can do a lot for myself in these 10 years, probably a lot more than I could do for myself continuing to work at a company or corporation. And that's not to bash people working at companies. I learned a ton from working at those experiences. But to make a long answer short, the way I looked at it was, all right, 10-year horizon. What gives me the highest chance at maximizing the amount of money I make? But more importantly, what gives me the best chance at the end of those 10 years? I'm living the kind of life I want to live. And the more I think about that, real estate just ended up becoming the more and more obvious answer. And you don't get a lot of chances like this in your life to take a risk. And so, I'm young, I'm blessed. I don't have kids yet or anything like that. Hopefully soon, but it was kind of now or never. If I don't do this now, I don't think I'm ever going to take another shot like this in my life. So let's go ahead and take the plunge and see how it goes.
I love it. I love it. So I want to kind of jump into how you learned about the game, how you learned about the game of real estate. So as you mentioned, you had a friend who was encouraging you to buy real estate. Can you talk about your relationship with that individual? And was he the first introduction to real estate? Was he who first introduced you to different concepts? And then from there you started reading? Talk about like your start in inundating yourself and the information and trying to put it into action.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was lucky enough where my start came from a manager that I had when I was working at Oracle, who had, he owned some investment properties. He had some houses in Oklahoma, and me and him were really, really cool. He was like a big mentor to me. He's a huge influence in my life. And so I was just lucky enough to be around him, and he pointed me in the right direction. He said, "Hey, buy a house just to live in. Start with that, right? Hey, you're spending all this money on rent. You've made some good money from your bonuses and sales and all that. I see you've been doing well. Put that money in a house. I promise you won't regret it." And he helped me buy that house. And then he just got me thinking about money in different ways that maybe I really hadn't been thinking about money. In school and all that, they don't really teach a lot of financial literacy, financial education. And so this idea of, hey, buy a house in the background while you're paying your mortgage, you're actually building equity. It's like almost like a little savings account that's back there that's growing and growing in the background while you sleep and all of those things. It taught me to kind of think about money and wealth in ways I hadn't thought about before. So I was lucky enough that he pointed me in that direction. But from there, man, like me and you were talking about right before we jumped on, the media that is out there is better than like any university that you could go to. I started just like a lot of people. There's biggerpockets.com where you jump on there and it's a forum. You can ask any question and 100 real estate experts are going to respond and help you and give you encouragement, tell you what direction to go. These days you jump on Twitter and some of the best commercial real estate operators are on there giving game out for free. Here's how we do things. Here's how we look at deals. Here's how you can find a deal. I mean, it is unbelievable the amount of information that's out there online. And not only that, you reach out to some of these folks, they are happy to jump on a call with you, answer your questions one-on-one. I'm telling you, it's better than any education university could give you. So to be honest, like I don't have like family members that did real estate. I'm not very close with anybody that's just in this game. I had a manager put me in the right direction. And from there, the internet really taught me everything else.
I love it. I love it. So ladies and gentlemen, I want you guys to really listen to what he said right there, because I think this is a constant in a lot of the interviews we do, where a lot of people, yes, they went to school. Yes, they might have had a mentor, but a lot of the information that they picked up on and then decided to take action on was stuff they picked up from the internet. And not to say that structuring university or structuring courses isn't amazing, but the internet and the power of the internet and the ability to leverage, information, and not only information, but relationships that you can build on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, groups, Instagram hashtags. Like there's just so much out there. And for you to not take advantage of that and then try to capitalize off of it, and then at the end of the day, take action, is just to keep it simple, stupid. So I love that. I love that so much. So what would you say was your first introduction to of how do I want to say this, introduction or information that helped you communicate to people, communicate to investors, potential investors? Like you said, you went back home to Houston. You were like, hey, is anybody looking to invest in Austin? Like, how did that go? Dive a little bit deeper into that, the conversations you had. How did you approach people? How are you raising this money? Are people just giving you checks, or are you, is there a specific account? Get into the deets of how that looked, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you this, and I hope the listeners, take this to heart too. When I first was 21, 22 years old and went back home and started asking people for money so we could buy this house in Austin, I did not have a damn clue what I was talking about. I was not a real estate expert. I did not know all these fancy words they use in this: cap rates, yield, cash on cash return. I wasn't talking that language. I went out there with some confidence. I had a little bit of knowledge. Hey, I know all these people are talking about Austin is hot. Austin real estate is blowing up. And you'd be surprised. There's a ton of, especially today, there's a ton of folks out there, really, really successful, wealthy individuals, who are looking to invest money. And there's more money than ever sitting on the sidelines. And things like investing in real estate or investing in a business, e-commerce platform, whatever it might be. These are really interesting things to folks like that. And a lot of times they've never had someone be that connection point for them. There's a lot of folks who thought, I want to put my money in real estate, I want to put my money in a business and that, and nobody's really come to them to be that middleman, be like, I will help you do it. Like when I got started, I used to be really, really what's the word, like I would have a lot of doubts. I'm young, I've never done it before, like who is going to take me seriously? And I was so shocked when I went out there with the little knowledge I had, and I asked people, and I don't think almost nobody said no. Everyone was like, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it, I would love to buy a house in Austin. And that's what a lot of people probably won't tell you. Every big successful real estate operator out there at some point or other had no clue what they were doing, and they just got started and had the confidence to start. So yeah, I just put myself out there, and you learn it as you go. And again, I had the internet and then folks that I met online as my guide, and it all came together. But you just start with the confidence to ask. You'd be surprised how many people are looking. Like think of it as like, I'm not here with my hand out asking you for money. I'm here to do you a service. You want to put your money in all these assets. You want to do this. I'm going to be the middleman. When you flip that switch in your head, it makes it a lot more easier. You get your confidence up and go raise money and ask folks for things and things like that.
I love it. I love it. So at that time, did you start Pebble Ridge like at that very time, or when did that, become that concept or that company become official and something that you were leading with?
Yeah, funny enough, yeah, at that time, 2017 or 2016, Pebble Ridge was not like a word in my head. I hadn't really thought about that. And it was just something I was doing on the side. It was, again, my manager told me, hey, build equity in the background, make your money from your job, put it into real estate. It's a tried and true way to, build wealth over time. And as the real estate market got crazier and crazier, especially in 2020, 2021, and prices just went up, especially in Austin, we're blessed to have done really, really well. So now we're sitting here, okay, these houses we bought have, hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity that we've now built up. And, some of the folks I had raised money from just asked me like, is there something we can do with all that money? And, encouraged me to go look at other opportunities. So I started looking at strip malls, self-storage facilities, again, all things that I was pointed in the direction of by folks on Twitter, which has been a huge help. And to keep a long story short, man, just to take that money to redeploy into bigger projects. And as a result of putting it into bigger projects, I had to go get more investors. And the next thing I know, this thing became a business. I had no intention of this becoming a business, but it took on a life of its own and became a business. And at a certain point, it became so much, not just time consuming, but so much freaking fun for me to do. Like I was just having a blast doing it. That's when I kind of came to that crossroads. All right, do I keep sticking it out with Google and this nice, cushy job that I have, or do I just go all in on this? But yeah, it picked up a life of its own. Pebble Ridge officially formed maybe halfway through 2021 when we finally realized like, oh wait, this is actually a business. I mean, this has got all the elements of a business going for it. Let's label it as such, let's market it as such, and let's run it like a business. And so that started probably about 8 months ago for me.
I love it. That's the best way for a business to come about. That's like the beautiful stories I like to hear. I mean, at the end of the day, I love business. So whether it was a plan from the time a kid was 12 or not, but I love hearing like they just started hustling. They just took action. Ladies and gentlemen, like what Faraz did is he took action, and he took action constantly and consistently. And then the fruits of his labor started to manifest, and he was like, oh shit, this is actually a business. I guess let's make it official. And it's kind of a, I guess thing. And I feel like more people, especially young people specifically, should go about doing things that way with whatever they want to do. It could be podcasting, it could be comedian, it could be music, it could be a web developer, whatever it is. Just go out there and start doing it. And figure out ways that you can provide value for your community or provide value for people around you with the skills that you developed or the things you enjoy doing, and just do. And the next thing you know, you're going to be like, oh shit, this is a business. And then
yeah, I love absolutely it. And I think that's a roadblock people have. Like I've run into this a bunch of times in my life. People are like, all right, cool, I'm in. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a business. And you start thinking 5 steps ahead about all the things of business. I don't know anything about accounting. I don't know how to create an LLC. I don't know. Don't worry about all that stuff. That'll come with time, right? Like this is like a big Lego building, right? You don't got to know how to put the whole thing together on day one. You just build brick by brick, right? So you want to start a business, you know what you're generally interested in, just take action. Like you said, just take the first step. After you take the first step, the second step becomes obvious. Take that. You don't have to have it all figured out on day one. Don't let those things be the mental obstacle. I promise you that falls into place as you start taking action consistently, like you said.
I love that. I love that. And for those individuals who aren't too familiar with real estate and don't know what equity means, I know you speak a lot about equity in general. So can you share maybe your own definition of what equity is and why you find it so valuable? And then I want to kind of a second part to that question is, how do you take equity and redistribute it into further, bigger properties or commercial properties like you're talking about you're starting to do now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like the dictionary definition, something like that. The easy way to think about it, equity means ownership. I own a part of something that's valuable, that's generating income, that's got some kind of value to it, right? If you buy a house and you live in it, you have equity in that house. Like, to take an example, so let's say you got a $200,000 house, and I go put down my $10,000 down payment to buy that house, right? I'm putting 5% down. $10,000 that I put in that house is my equity, as in I own that much part of the house. If I ever went and sold that house tomorrow, I'm getting that 10,000 back because I own it. But to be more specific, the way I think about equity, that's really powerful. And there's a ton of books and stuff about this, but what really changed my mindset is equity is, like you said, your ownership, but that ownership is working to make you money on its own, right? So I put $10,000 in and I buy the house, right? Then I go on with my life. I'm going to my job. I'm making my money. I'm earning my paycheck. In the background, that $10,000 I put in, that house is maybe going up in value. It goes up another $5, $10, $15,000 every year. And I'm not doing any work to make that happen. I'm over here working my job. In the background, that $10,000 of equity is doing its own work. Now that 10,000 has become 15,000, 20,000, 25,000. So to me, when I talk about equity, it's how can I make my money, or, how can I want to do work and trade my time for money, and I have a job, and then the money I make, how can I put that money to work where that money is making money for me in the background, right? And so that's what you'll hear a lot of successful people talk about. Your time you can trade for money. Now, once you get that money, you, instead of just keeping it in the bank account, let that money make you some money, whether that's buying a stock. Buying stocks is equity. You're getting equity in those stocks, whether it's buying houses, whether it's investing in a business, whatever it might be. Make sure you're earning money in the background. That's the way I like to think about equity. Make money in the background, make money while you sleep, make money while you eat, make money while you're at work, make money in the background. That's how I think about equity.
I love it. I love it. And so you said that once you started realizing that over the years, Austin was booming, a lot of those properties, increased in value, obviously. So the equity you guys and your partners have in all these homes or these properties has risen. And so you're like, okay, you have some partners that are asking you, what else can we do with that? So now you start looking at self-storage facilities, commercial properties, retail properties. So how exactly do you, take the funds or take equity out of a home or out of a property and redistribute that cash elsewhere? Are you taking loans against the equity? Like, how exactly does that work? I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty, but I do want to talk about this real quick before we transition.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it really high level, but there's a million. That's the cool thing about real estate. There's no one way to do things. There's a million ways you can go about doing things, and people have gotten rich doing a million different things in real estate. But when it comes to, okay, I have this equity. This house used to be 200,000, now it's 400,000. So there's $200,000 of value that was gained, or 200,000 of equity, but it's in this house, right? I can't go to the house and take money out of it, right? So what you do is exactly what you said. That you could sell the house, right? I sell the house, I take all that cash as profit, now I can go do what I want with it. Or you can do what people call a cash out refinance. Okay, at the time I bought this house, it was 200,000. Now it's worth 400,000. So let me go get a loan from the bank, and I'll tell the bank, hey, this house is worth $400,000. Give me a loan for $300,000, and I will secure that loan with the house. That means like, hey, if I stop paying this debt, you can come take my house away. It's worth $400,000, so you should be comfortable giving me 300. Now, what I did there, I took that $300,000 loan. Keep in mind, the house was only originally 200,000, right? So that extra 100,000. 200,000 I go pay off my old loan. That extra 100,000 goes in my pocket. And that's what people call the cash out refinance. And there's a ton of other things you can do as ways to access your equity in the homes, but those are two of the more common ones. There's things like lines of credit, a HELOC, home equity line of credit, and all sorts of things. Again, that's where I encourage you to go to the internet, right? There's a university of information out there. If you do 10 minutes of research, you could probably become just as good of an expert as I am. And how do you take equity out of a house?
I love it. I love it. So I want you to tell us a little bit more about Pebble Ridge. Like, what's your guys' investment strategy? What is how do you guys find investors? Are you guys doing a lot of outreach, a lot of outbound, or do you guys have people getting referred in? Or just talk a little bit about how you guys make money and how you plan to grow and how you do what y'all do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, today's day and age, there is a lot of money sitting on the sidelines. What I mean by that is there is a lot of really successful, high net worth folks who have a ton of cash, and they've historically over the years put it all in the stock market, or things that are really really easy. The average person is investing in, which is totally a legitimate strategy. But as folks, in those their positions, they start thinking, let me diversify. I don't want to be all in on the stock market. What happens if, Biden says this, inflation's going to happen to this. So long story short, people are looking to diversify. So more than ever, people are looking to put their money into assets like real estate. So again, it just comes to putting yourself out there. To get started, that's what we did. We went and put ourselves out there to folks, spoke with a lot of confidence, and it turns out we were fulfilling a need, right? We thought, oh my God, they're going to be doing us a favor. Looking back on it, we were doing them a favor. We filled a very strong need for them in their, finances. And then after you kind of get past that part, it's always the hardest at first. But once you get in and folks are investing with you and you cut them that first check, it's like, okay, here you go. Here's your returns as an investor. I promise you, stuff takes on a life of its own. They tell their buddies at work, or they tell, whoever else. People have conversations. Yeah, I'd love to get into real estate. Oh, really? Would you? I got this guy Faraz. Actually, I invested with him. He does great for me. And a lot of it at this point is just word of mouth and referrals. So we started out, like I said, putting ourselves out there, and now the investor part of the business really it's taken on a life of its own. And I think as we continue to do more and more deals, that network effect is just going to keep growing and growing. On Twitter these days, I see crazy stories. I see folks who have been in the real estate game for 20 years. They'll post a deal, they'll send it out to their investor list, right? And they're looking to raise like $20 million or something. I'm not in the big leagues like that. They'll say, hey, we're looking to raise $20 million. And they'll come and say, oh, we raised it all in 9 minutes.
Oh,
And
that's crazy.
unbelievable. And it just speaks to the fact that the longer you're in the game, the more momentum you build. Getting started is the hardest part. Once you're in it, I promise you, it only continues to get easier and easier and easier, which is the beautiful part about this game.
Nice. And before we jumped on and started recording, we were talking for a moment, and you say today's been a busy day. You've been doing a lot of interviews. So can you kind of talk about maybe what has been taking up a lot of your time lately, and maybe what are some challenges that you've been either overcoming or facing on a day-to-day basis as you start to build this company?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are definitely big time in growth mode, acquisitions mode. So I'll tell you the hardest part about real estate right now, and pretty much a lot of people in my position would agree. Real estate market is hot. It's hotter than a lot of people have ever seen it being. Meaning it's really expensive to go buy. Even forget commercial stuff, forget strip malls, self storage. Even to go buy a house is really really difficult these days. I'm sure you probably hear people talking about it, and that makes life tough as an investor. If I'm paying a lot of money up front, that means I'm not going to make as good of a return on my investment if I have to put a lot more money in it up front. So that's definitely the challenging part of the business. But it goes back to what I said earlier. Okay, one, it's a challenge, which honestly I like, because that causes a lot of people to quit and give up. It's just not going to work. I looked at like 3 deals. They were all too expensive. Yeah, this will never work. Okay, you looked at 3 deals. You got to go look at 100 of them, buddy. Not only that, we love the fact that it's a challenge because it's a barrier to entry. Like what I spend a lot of my time doing these days is what I used to do in my sales days. I go make a list of people that own the properties I like. I pick up the phone, I call them. It's really uncomfortable. I put myself out there, say, hey, I'm Faraz. I own a couple of properties nearby. Would you be interested in seeing an offer? And so, anyways, to go back to your question, we're hiring people to do exactly that, exactly what I just mentioned. I'm on the phones all day long talking to owners these days, and we're trying to hire an army of people that are going to help me be on the phones and help my partner be on the phones and find those properties. Because again, that's the big challenge in real estate. But in my mind, I love that that's the challenge, because it's going to keep a lot of people out of the game. A lot of people are going to quit for that reason. And those who can break through and nail it are the people that come out on the other side really, really rich. So, wherever there's difficulty and a challenge, there's probably a lot of reward on the other side.
I love it. I love it a lot. Right on, man. I love that. I think one thing about real estate is no matter how old you are, no matter where you come from, no matter your background, no matter how tall, how short you are, you can find a way into the industry, find a way to make money in real estate as long as you apply yourself, you take consistent action, you don't quit. Like I think it's been so cool to see young people like you and young people in my own community who are out here and are just doing what other people aren't willing to do. And because of that, they're able to feed their families. And obviously there's so many things you can get into the weeds about in real estate. I mean, I know myself, I'm interested in real estate, and sometimes I'll be on Twitter and I'll just see some shit that makes no sense at all. I'm like, I do not understand what this guy is tweeting about. But like in those situations, taking that tweet and putting it in Google and researching these words and writing them down in your book and getting on calls with people and just taking action and showing up is, why I believe you're here today, and why I believe the listeners here today that might be interested in real estate will go, on and be successful in that world. So I love to hear it. What about, have you been able to get any of your friends, any of your family, any of your cousins like interested in real estate just by talking about it all the time or just being in this world? Has there been any, byproduct of your energy fed off on somebody else close to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these days real estate investing is getting more and more popular. I mean, you go on Facebook, you see ads for gurus talking about here's how you flip houses, this and that. So it is popular. So yeah, I definitely talk to people, like kids that are in college or just coming out of school that are interested in real estate. And it's one of my favorite things to do is sit down and answer the questions that they might have about real estate. Because, like I said, I was lucky enough to have someone to point me in that direction, which I think was huge. So I'm always happy to do it myself. And yeah, with friends and family, I mean, only thing I'd say is they've been all really, really supportive, which is the biggest blessing I can ask for. It's not easy to come to your family and say, hey, I got this job at Google, but I'm gonna leave and we may not make money for a couple of years, but I promise it's gonna work out. And for them to come and have faith in you is really a blessing. And so that's all I can say. I'm really grateful for that.
I love it. I love it. And so what we're going to do next is I'm going to read a tweet that you tweeted, and then we'll kind of just discuss a little bit about it. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Awesome. So a tweet you put out was, have you ever examined your relationship with money? Question mark. Once you're living comfortably, why do you keep chasing more? So the reason I chose this was because, like we just stated, when you have a job at Google, when you're working in sales where there is kind of a cap on income, but kind of not a cap on income compared to, some other positions. And you might be making good enough money to survive or to buy a house or to pay some groceries. Like, what was it for you, or what is it for you? What is like do you have a number? And if you're not comfortable like sharing that, like what is like the ideal lifestyle look like for you to where you're like okay with where you're at financially, and you're like, okay, I'm ready to like play a little bit. Because I think from the energy you put out there, most people who are entrepreneurs, they're never going to stop working because we thrive off of this, like we love it. But there is a point where we might feel a little bit more comfortable, relaxing a little bit, going to have a little bit of fun. So what's that look like for you? What's your number? Or maybe what does the financial freedom life look like for you? Go ahead and share that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what inspired that tweet. The funny thing is, I'm probably like the cheapest guy, man. Like I don't, I eat at, man, my wife's going to be so embarrassed I'm saying all this stuff. I eat at Taco Bell like 2-3 times a week. I don't go shopping. Like I'm not buying clothes. I don't travel that. I'm as cheap as it gets. So a lot of times, the money starts coming in and it's good. And you're like, yeah, I'm making money. And I think I'm like, what am I even going to do with all this money? Like, I don't spend like that. I don't have a lot of things that I like to go out and do. And a lot of people do. A lot of people have their goals. They want to travel. They want to, buy the Ferrari or whatever. There's nothing wrong with it. But the point I'm trying to make is this. At a certain point, I realized for me, I'm trying to get all this money. And it's becoming a priority in my life. And certain things are getting deprioritized because of that. A lot of times, me and my wife should be going out or sitting down and having a conversation, talking about how our day went. And my mind is still stuck on the money. Like, oh yeah, how am I going to do this? How much money am I going to make on this deal? And I sit down and ask myself, like, I don't even spend money like that. Why am I thinking about money so much? And what I realized at a certain point is we're in this culture, I talked about, on Twitter and all this stuff. It's great because you see all these successful people and you learn from them, but there's an ugly side to that. The ugly side is subconsciously you start to train yourself to think, oh, it's all about money. People are always talking about money, how to make money. And if I want to be successful, these people I look up to, I have to make money. And so it's not even about, now we're at a point, it's not even about like, oh, money is going to help me buy groceries and this. It's like money's just a scoreboard. Like the more money I am, the better I'm doing in life and all of that. And you just have to be wary of that at a certain point. Everyone's got their own number. If you want to live a great lavish lifestyle, there's nothing wrong with it. Just make sure you understand, okay, I'm chasing money, but why? Why am I doing it? If it's just for your ego, if it's just because, well, everyone on Twitter is doing it, so I should do it, make sure, just double check, is that the healthiest relationship to have to money? Am I putting down other things in my life that I probably should be elevating a little more because I'm too focused on the money? Just think about it a little deeper. That's all I'm asking. And I'm blessed to say that, first of all, because a lot of folks struggle with money. Finances are a struggle for a lot of people. There are people that can't make ends meet, right? And me and a lot of people are blessed to not have that worry in our life. So once you get to that point where you're comfortable, right, where you don't have to worry about, can I make my next payment, can I put food on the table, then really just make sure you ask yourself, okay, I'm doing all this stuff, I put in all these, this is how I spend my time and my day, but why am I really doing it? Make sure you're not ignoring stuff. I mean, folks in their 20s and 30s, they're always like us, entrepreneurial, chasing the bag, I'm going to be successful. When you look at folks who are in their 60s or 70s, are they really always talking about, oh yeah, I'm chasing the bag and this? They tend to have a different perspective, right? Oh, I'm spending time with my family, this and that. I think over the years, those folks probably stopped and realized at one point, well, okay, I've got the money. Why do I care about it so much? It's not even about buying groceries or anything anymore, right? It's just it's a scoreboard. Don't let it be that. Anyways, I could go on and on, but let me stop there. But that's kind of what inspired that tweet. Just think about why I'm chasing money. Like really, really deeply think about it. If you don't have a good answer, make sure your priorities are straight.
I love it. I love it. Could you share one book and then one person, because we keep talking about media, so one person off of Twitter or YouTube or some content that you consume from a specific individual, and one book that's been super helpful for you in real estate, and then one for life, just life in general?
Sure, absolutely. There's a guy on Twitter. He's a pretty big personality, Nick Huber. Maybe a lot of folks on the podcast have heard
Shout
of
out
him.
Sweaty Startup, baby.
Yes, sir. Sweaty Startup, the OG himself, man. And what I respect about him, that was the guy I was telling you about a little earlier, man, that he'll put his whole playbook out there. Here's how I run my facilities. Here's what I look for in a deal. Here's how I find the deals. And I remember everyone was like, dude, you're giving your game away for free. What are you doing? And he was the one that's like, I'll give it away for free. 99% of y'all not going to use it. Y'all not going to do the work, right? What I love is how transparent he is. He puts his whole playbook out there, talk about delivering value. That's amazing. I learned a ton from him. Can you hear me all right?
Audio is still perfect. It's okay.
Yeah. And then when it comes to books, I talked a little bit about equity and money, making money in the background. That's the classic book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that a lot of folks read. A really, really great book to get the mindset right. But a book I really love, there's a book called Pitch Anything. It's by a guy named Oren Klaff. So Oren Klaff used to raise money for private equity and for ventures. He would go in and, he would pitch deals, pitch companies, and ask investors for money. And his book is all about the psychology of making that pitch. And so we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, right? Hey, it's a little uncomfortable when you get started to, start a business. When you first start a business, you're either asking folks for money and you have no experience, or, you start a lawn care business, you're going knocking door to door. And I don't have a single customer yet, but please, would you consider hiring me? It's an uncomfortable spot to be. That book, Oren Klaff, breaks down the psychology. When you go and start a pitch, when you make a request to somebody, can I get X, Y, or Z? What happens in their mind? What are the stages that your message goes through? First, it hits this part of the brain and it has this kind of fight or flight response. Then it comes into this information processing part of the brain. Anyways, I'll keep it short. It's a fascinating book, and it'll teach you a lot about your psychology when it comes to talking to people, how to become more persuasive, how to get your message to really break through. And it'll make you a lot more confident when you go out and you have to do those uncomfortable things when you're starting your business.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So the last thing we're going to get into today is a few personal questions, and then we'll wrap it up with our finale question that we ask all of our guests. So question number one would be, how do you wish you spent your time 10 years ago? So when you're like 17, 16, when you're a late teenager, how do you think you'll wish you'd have spent your time looking back 10 years from now as well? So 10 years ago, how do you wish you spent your time? And then 10 years from now, how do you think you'll look back and wish you spent your time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. A lot of people say 10 years ago, I'm not gonna say, oh, I wish I was out there hustling, grinding, or investing in Bitcoin 10 years ago or something like that. It was awesome. I mean, 10 years ago, I was in high school. I was having a great time. I was hanging out with my friends. We were. I mean, it's your youth, right? It's your young years that you're never gonna really have that experience again. So honestly, back then, I wasn't, the motivated or focused or thinking about here's my 5 or 10 year plan. I was just having a good time.
I wouldn't change that. I mean, you don't get those years back.
That's
Enjoy
true.
yourself in your youth. Learn about yourself, learn about what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, that kind of stuff you don't get back later in life, right? You blink your eyes and you're 20 and you're 30 and you're 40 and you're not able to go do those things anymore. So enjoy it. And I guess looking forward 10 years from now, it goes back to what I said earlier. Yeah, of course, I'm playing this real estate game. I'm competitive. I do want to be successful in it, right? I do want to make the money and have the success and all of that. But the big thing in my life that I've been working on a lot recently is let's make sure that doesn't come at the expense of other things. 10 years from now, not only do I want to be someone successful in real estate, I want to be a father who's very, very present for his children. I want to be a husband that's very, very present for, my wife and present for my family. I want to get really, really good at that things and really spend a lot of time on my relationships, right? Money comes and goes, but the people that have your back, they don't come and go. And I want to invest a lot more time in those folks over the next 5-10 years for sure.
I love that. I love that a lot. So I kind of already asked you this question, but do you have mentors outside of that original manager and outside of our virtual mentors like Nick? Are there any mentors in your life? And if you had to suggest to, a younger person, 18, 17 years old, on how to choose a mentor, what would you suggest?
Yeah, that's always been an interesting thing for me because I'm always like, what do I do? I just ask them, will you be my mentor? That's weird. I don't know. And I know a lot of people get confused for that reason. How do I find a mentor? I mean, I wouldn't say I have like an official, like someone just like Master Yoda in my life, just telling me do this, do that. I don't have any of that. But what I do have is I will say is that online community, right? Thing I'll say is Nick Huber's out there posting content on Twitter. There's a bunch of guys out there, Moses Cake, all these guys posting content on Twitter. But if you want mentorship, the thing I would say, if I was speaking to a young person, put yourself out there. Closed mouths don't get fed. You would be surprised. My perception used to be these guys are real successful. They're rich. I'm a nobody. I mean, they're not going to spend time talking to me. Like they got a million things to do. You would be surprised. If I was young and, maybe the advice I would give myself 5-10 years ago is reach out to those folks. Just ask a question here or there. I mean, the other advice I hear a lot of times is, oh, if you want to get a mentor, bring them some value. Don't just knock on the door and say, hey, help me. Bring them some value. Of course, yeah, you should definitely try to bring them some value. But sometimes, I don't have a ton of value to give you right now. But you'd be surprised at generosity of folks out there is what I'm trying to get at. Just put yourself out there. Closed mouths don't get fed. Reach out to folks on Twitter, on YouTube, folks like yourself. Reach out to them, and you'd be surprised the amount of help that you might be able to get just from that. I don't say I have any one mentor, but I have a community that has helped me get to this point.
I love it. I love it. I love it. One thing I think every tight-knit community speaks about is the importance of community when you're trying to raise somebody, whether it's familial or just how to live life raising a child, or whether it's business and just having a community around you that you can bounce ideas off of. Or I'm sure if a lot of you guys have probably read Think and Grow Rich, so having your own personal mastermind. So the last question I want to ask you is, what are your 3 most valuable gifts? And I know that might be hard for some people to answer for themselves because everybody wants to be all kind and not and humble and all that, which is cool and all. But what do you think are the 3 most valuable gifts you bring to the world? It can be business, it can be personal, it can just be your smile, whatever. I don't care. But what to you, if you had to really look inside yourself, are your 3 most valuable gifts you provide for the world?
Absolutely, man. I think the number one, 2, and 3. Number one for me is I'm lucky enough to live a really, really good life. Like we talked about, I don't worry about where my next meal is coming from. I don't have to worry about the money in the bank and all those things. I'm blessed to be in that position, and I'm grateful. And so that's that number one thing I have that sets the foundation for everything else in me. If you can zoom out every now and then and just be like, man, my life is actually really freaking sweet. This is awesome. When you zoom back into whatever moment you're stuck in, it don't seem that bad anymore. And that's good because especially when you're running a business, there's a lot of days you're gonna get kick in the guts, punch in the guts, something goes wrong, 20 things go wrong. If you can zoom out in that moment and just appreciate, all right, yeah, these things went wrong, but the rest of my life is amazing. You can come back to that situation and approach it with a sense of confidence. And not only just for yourself, but that attitude becomes contagious to others. You can be around folks all the time, no matter what situation you're in. If you have that ability to be grateful, then that positivity really radiates from you all the time. And you bring that to every environment you're in. And that has a compounding effect. When you're positive and you're grateful and that really shines through in your personality, it draws people to you. right? And that creates different opportunities, the ability to talk to different people, relationship with different people. I mean, it starts and ends with like that gratefulness and positivity in your life. It'll get you through the bad days. It'll make the good days feel even better. It'll make the people around you feel better. And that's what life is all about. Um, Man, outside of that, I'm lucky enough where well, one good thing I talked a lot about Twitter and social media and all of that. I'm doing a good job of building a healthier relationship with that stuff. I watch how often I'm getting on my phone, how often I'm scrolling through Instagram and all that stuff. It's scary. iPhone has this feature y'all should go check out. It'll tell you how many times you picked up your phone during your day.
Damn.
Don't if you check it, you're gonna be messed up. Like you might think it's 20. Like I just checked it the other day, and I think I don't get on my phone that much. It was like 250 times in the day.
Shit.
Yeah, it's crazy. So one of the things I feel like I'm getting better at is my relationship to the technology and my phone, because what I see, especially during COVID, is like it's crazy. I'm sure you've seen it now. We sit in a room, 4 or 5 of us, and it's dead quiet, and everyone is on their phone. It's unbelievable. Imagine 20 years ago, somebody walked in and saw that. That's bizarre. How did that become normal? So, anyways, long answer. What I'm trying to say is, I think something I'm trying to be better at, in order to, be a better person and, be better in my relationships, like I talked about, is and make sure that I understand my relationship to my phone, to social media, and all of that. Like, that use it when you need it, put it away when you don't. I promise you, there's an ugly side to it. So, yeah, I would say those are the 2 big things, man, for me. Be grateful, and then, with all this crazy stuff happening in the world, social media and phone, just be conscious, be aware of your relationship. Go check in your little app right now if you got an iPhone, how many times you picked your phone up, and you'll be scared straight for life, I promise.
Damn. I'm gonna send you a DM and be like, hey, this is how much mine was right after this.
I won't put you're all good, man.
But okay, I love it. So first and foremost, I want to acknowledge you for, the smile that you've kept on your face throughout this whole conversation. Makes me feel like in real life you're probably smiling all the time too. And I think that sounds like such a generic compliment, but people often don't appreciate how important and how good it makes you feel when you walk past somebody that's just smiling and radiates good energy. And I just want you to know that you do that. So keep that up. I also want to acknowledge you for your hustle and commitment to taking action, because you could have acquired the information. You could have had a nice community on Twitter or with family. You could also have a great manager that suggested something to you, but at the end of the day, you had to make the decision to take action and move forward every day. So be proud of yourself for that. I know oftentimes it's hard for us to pat ourselves on the back. Make sure you do that. So keep it up. Thank you for coming on today and spreading some love, putting some good energy out there, sharing some information, and letting the people hear your story. So before we transition off this conversation and this call today, I want to ask you our final question that we ask all our guests. It's your last day on earth. You've lived to be 179, however old you want to be. You've done everything you've wanted to do in life. You've achieved all your goals in real estate or as a husband and as a father. But it's your last day on earth, and this is the last thing your great grandchildren get to remember you for. And they ask you, great grandpa, give me one piece of advice on how to live life. What are you going to tell them?
Man, you're gonna hit me with that right at the end. That's a great question, man. That is a great question, man. Not to be repetitive, but it's exactly what you said. Life's got its ups and downs. I mean, especially us young people, we haven't seen the worst. There's gonna be worse days ahead. There's gonna be better days ahead. It's a up and it's a down. And if you let yourself be on that roller coaster, you can get lost. If you smile through it all, I mean, it sounds so cliche. Like you said, it sounds so cliche. And I feel bad because sometimes, people are going through real stuff in their life and real hardship, right? And it's not easy to go through. But if you can maintain that little bit of gratefulness, a little bit of positivity, and you can not only that, but let it shine through, share it with the world, walk around with that smile on your face. I promise you, your life is going to get exponentially better. Folks around your life's gonna be actually better. The one thing that I hear people say all the time about folks that are successful, like, oh, that guy just got lucky, right? Like, oh, that guy started that business, man, he just got lucky, man, it worked out for him. But they don't see behind the scenes that dude probably tried something 20 different times and one of them hit. You didn't see the 19 that failed, you saw the one that hit. And you're like, oh man, he's so lucky. No, he or she tried a bunch of things. Even if you kept failing, even if life kept kicking you, you maintain that positivity, you are bound and destined for success. It is inevitable. You maintain the positivity, you stay on your feet, you keep smiling, you elevate the others around you. You might get knocked down 19 times. I promise you, it is inevitable for you to succeed.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Before we sign out, let the people know where they can find you on social media, how they can support you in your business, and any last words you have.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Our business is Pebble Ridge Capital. You can find us at pebbleridgecap.com. You can sign up there and get some more information. You can find me on Twitter as well. I'm FAZ_H1. So you can find me there. And yeah, man, shout out for having me on the show. You are a natural at this, man. I mean, you are like born for podcasting. So I wish nothing but the best for you. I know you're going to be successful. I'm just grateful to be a part of it, man.
I love it. Thank you, man. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you leave a 5-star review, share with a friend, because that is the only way we can grow. This is your boy, CIZZY, signing out. Salud.